Hello, everyone, and welcome. It's good to have you with me tonight. This video is one of my longer compilations, and tonight's theme is one that I find particularly disturbing. Scary, true, uber horror stories. I make these videos specifically for people who have trouble sleeping or relaxing. Sometimes a deep, unsettling mystery is the only thing that can distract from real-world stress and anxiety. And as always, the stories are paired with a custom rain mix you won't hear anywhere else. If these videos help you, the best way to support this channel is to hit the like button, subscribe so you never miss a story, and drop a comment to let me know you were here. It means the world. And just so you know, I only place 3 ads in this entire video, and they're all at the very end. I hope you enjoy. Thank you for being here. Now, let's get into it. As a Uber driver, you learn to trust the app. The little blue line on the screen is your Bible. It tells you where to go, who to pick up, where to drop them off. But what do you do when the app sends you a passenger who isn't on any map and wants to go to a place that doesn't exist? You're supposed to cancel the ride. I didn't, and now I'm the one who's lost. I drive nights. It pays better, and it's quieter. You get the last of the airport arrivals, the bartenders heading home, the city slowly breathing out. It's a lonely job, but it's a simple one. Or at least, it was. The ride that changed everything came in around 2:30 a.m. on a Tuesday. It was a lucrative ping, a premium fare that was triple the normal rate. I almost ignored it because the pickup location was weird. The pin was dropped at the main gate of the old, sprawling Greenwood Cemetery. Picking someone up from a cemetery in the middle of the night is a big, flashing red flag. But the fare was too good to pass up. I needed the money. Bills were piling up. I accepted. The passenger's name was just A. Perfect 5-star rating. A member since 2014, made me feel a little better. I pulled up to the huge wrought iron gates of the cemetery, and he was there, waiting, standing perfectly still under a flickering street lamp, as if he had been expecting me. He was an old man, dressed in a simple, dark, and slightly outdated suit. He looked neat, clean, and completely out of place. He got into the back seat without a word. I gave my standard cheerful, "Hey, how's your night going?" He just gave a small, polite nod, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. The car was filled with a strange, cool air and a faint, sweet smell, like damp earth and old flowers. "Destination is in the app," he said, his voice a dry, quiet whisper. I looked at my phone. The destination he had entered wasn't an address. It was just a set of GPS coordinates about 30 miles out of town, on a rural, unnamed road. The app had given it a label I'd never seen before. The Terminus. The drive was the most unnerving 30 minutes of my life. He never spoke. He never moved. He just sat in the back seat, a silent, still presence, and stared out the window into the darkness. I kept glancing at him in the rearview mirror. He wasn't looking up the scenery. His gaze was fixed, as if he was watching a world that I couldn't see. We finally arrived. The GPS announced, "You have reached the terminus." It was nothing, just a wide spot on a dark, empty country road, flanked by a dense, dark field on one side and woods on the other. "Here is fine," the old man whispered. The ride ended. He got out of the car. "Thank you," he said, his voice just as quiet and dry as before. "You've been very kind." Then he turned and walked into the pitch-black field, disappearing from my headlights' glow almost instantly. I sat there for a full minute, my heart pounding. Then I just got out of there. As I was driving back to the city, my phone chimed with the fare notification. The ride, which should have been about $40, showed up as a payment of $400. And in the trip comments, where a passenger might say, "Thanks for the ride," there was a single sentence, "For your discretion."
I didn't know what to do about the money. $400 for a 30-minute ride. I convinced myself it was some eccentric millionaire playing a weird game, or maybe even testing me for some kind of private driving service. I didn't report it. I just took the money and tried to forget the strange floral smell and the silent old man. A week later, Tuesday night, 2:30 a.m., my phone pinged. My stomach dropped. It was the same ride. Passenger A. Pickup, Greenwood Cemetery. Destination, the terminus. The fare was listed as variable. I should have declined. I should have logged off and gone home. But I thought of my daughter's dental bills. I thought of the $400. My greed and my need won out over my fear. I accepted the ride. He was there, waiting in the same spot, looking exactly the same. He got in the back seat, and the same cold, earthy smell filled the car. This time, the silence of the ride was different. It wasn't just empty. It was heavy with a sense of knowledge. Halfway through the ride, he spoke, his whispery voice making me jump. "Your wife's cough sounds much better today." I froze. My wife, Sarah, had been battling a nasty case of bronchitis all week. Her cough had finally broken that very morning. I had never mentioned it. I hadn't spoken to anyone about it. How in God's name could he know that? "Excuse me?" I stammered, looking at him in the rear-view mirror. He just gave a slight, serene smile. "It's good that she is feeling well," was all he said, and then he went back to staring out the window. The rest of the drive was a blur of pure paranoid terror. He wasn't just an eccentric old man. He knew things about me. We arrived at the same empty spot on the road. He got out, vanished into the field, and a few minutes later the payment came through. Another $400. The note this time was different. "For your continued silence." This was not a game. This was something else. I decided then and there I was done. No amount of money was worth this. I got home, and before I went to bed, I opened the Uber app, determined to block the user A, or report him. But his profile was a ghost. No picture, no history, just a name and a rating. There was no option to block him.
As I was about to log off, a notification popped up on my screen. It wasn't a ride request. It was a direct message, a feature I didn't even know existed for drivers. It was from A. The message was short and simple. I know you are considering declining next week's ride. I would not recommend it.
I was a prisoner of the app on my phone. The message was not a request, it was a threat. All week I was a nervous wreck. I thought about quitting, about throwing my phone in the river, but the threat was so vague, so powerful. What would happen if I declined? Would he show up at my house? Would something happen to Sarah? I didn't know, and I was too terrified to find out. The next Tuesday, at 2:29 a.m., I was parked a block from the cemetery, waiting, my stomach in knots. The ping came through. I accepted. I picked him up. The same man, the same suit, the same silence, the same cold. But tonight I had a plan. A stupid, desperate plan. I was going to break the pattern. The route the app gave was a straight shot down a series of dark country highways. I was going to get to the destination, but I was going to do it my way. I was going to take a different set of back roads. I needed to prove to myself that I still had some control. About 10 miles into the ride, I ignored the app's instruction to turn left. I kept going straight. The moment my car deviated from the glowing blue line on the screen, my car's electrical system went insane. The radio, which had been off, blasted on at full volume, screeching with a wall of deafening static. The GPS screen glitched, the map dissolving into a flickering, pixelated image of a city I didn't recognize. The headlights strobed on and off, plunging the road into intermittent darkness. The car's engine sputtered, the RPMs dropping dangerously low. The old man in the back seat hadn't moved. I looked at him in the mirror. He just slowly turned his head and looked directly at me. He wasn't angry. His expression was one of profound, weary disappointment. "The route is the route, son," he whispered, his voice somehow cutting through the screeching static. "There are no shortcuts for this kind of delivery. Please turn back." My desperate act of rebellion was crushed in an instant. Terrified, I slammed on the brakes, made a screeching U-turn, and got back on the app's designated route. The second my tires hit the correct road, everything returned to normal. The static stopped, the lights went steady, the GPS map returned. I had no control. I was just the driver. We arrived at the terminus. As the old man opened his door to get out, he paused and looked at me. "Every driver makes that mistake once," he said, his voice holding a trace of something that might have been pity. "Just don't make it again. Some passengers are more important than others." He stepped out of the car, but before he turned to walk into the field, he reached into his coat pocket and dropped a small metallic object on the ground beside the road. Then he vanished into the darkness. My curiosity overriding my fear, I got out of the car and picked it up. It was an old, tarnished silver pocket watch. I opened it. It was stopped. I turned it over, and on the back, beautifully engraved, was a name and a date. The date was from a little over a year ago, and the name was of another Uber driver from my city, a man who had been all over the local news after he and his car had simply vanished without a trace during a late-night shift.
Holding that pocket watch, the horrifying truth of my situation finally became clear. I wasn't the first driver. I was a replacement. The man who had vanished last year, he must have made the mistake one too many times. I was a modern-day Charon, the ferryman for the dead, and my Toyota Camry was the boat. The Uber app was my river Styx, and the terminus wasn't a place. It was a handoff point, a transfer station between their world and ours. I knew I couldn't escape. Declining the ride wasn't an option. Following the route just meant I was playing their game, waiting for the day I'd be replaced. There was only one other path. I had to break the game completely. For the next week, I prepared. I told my wife I loved her. I put my affairs in order. And the next Tuesday, when the ping came, I accepted it without hesitation. I picked him up, the same man, the same suit, the same silence. I followed the blue line on the map perfectly, a compliant, obedient driver. The old man in the back seemed pleased. We approached the final empty stretch of road. Approaching the terminus, the GPS said calmly. "This is my last fare," I said, my voice steady. I turned the steering wheel hard to the right, stomping on the accelerator. We flew off the road, crashing through a rickety wooden fence and bouncing violently across the dark, uneven field. I wasn't aiming for the spot where he usually disappeared. I was aiming for the dark line of trees a quarter mile away. The old man in the back didn't scream. He didn't gasp. He didn't brace for impact. He just let out a long, soft, weary sigh. "A shame," he whispered, his voice full of a genuine, ancient sadness. "I was starting to like you." The world exploded in a shower of glass and the sickening crunch of metal. Then blackness. I woke up in a hospital bed. I had a concussion, 3 broken ribs, and the shattered arm. But I was alive. The police were waiting for me. They told me a farmer had found my crashed car wrapped around an old oak tree in his field. But their story was different from mine. They said I was the only one in the car. No passenger, no footprints, no evidence anyone else had been there at all. I tried to show them the trip on my Uber app, the proof of my weekly terrifying rides, but the history was gone, erased. There was no record of A or the terminus. My earnings history just showed a string of normal, everyday fares. The pocket watch was gone from my belongings. It was as if the last month of my life was nothing more than a bad dream. I thought I was free. I thought I had broken the cycle. I sold my car. I got a desk job. I never drove at night again. Until last week. I had to work late, and my car was in the shop. I had no other choice. I ordered an Uber. A new-looking Prius pulled up. The driver was a young kid, couldn't have been more than 20, headphones in, just trying to make a buck. I got in the back seat. The familiar motion of the car, a strange, unwelcome memory. My phone buzzed. It was the Uber app, showing my trip details, the little blue line pointing towards my home. But for a split second, just a flicker of a glitch before it corrected itself, the destination on the map wasn't my address. It was a single, stark, terrifying label I knew all too well. The terminus. I looked up at the back of the young driver's head. He had no idea. He was just a kid, following the blue line, taking a stranger home. And I realized with a gut-wrenching, soul-crushing certainty that I hadn't broken the system. I had just been fired, and the company had already found my replacement.
The Uber app is a contract of trust. You trust the driver to follow the blue line on the map, and they trust you not to be a psycho. But what happens when you get a driver who isn't following the GPS, who isn't taking you home, who just keeps stopping to pick up trash off the side of the road, telling you it's all a gift for you? My flight landed at JFK just after 11 p.m. It had been a grueling 10-hour journey, and all I wanted was the anonymity of my hotel room. The taxi line was a chaotic mess, so I did what any sane, exhausted person would do. I ordered an Uber. A few minutes later, a clean-looking sedan pulled up. The driver, a middle-aged man with a kind, forgettable face named Bill, gave me a polite nod as I threw my suitcase in the trunk and collapsed into the back seat. The ride started normally. He confirmed my name, the hotel's address, and we pulled out into the maze of highways surrounding the airport. It was raining, a light misty drizzle that smeared the city lights into a watercolor painting. I leaned my head against the cool glass of the window, ready to zone out for the 30-minute ride. About 10 minutes in, just as we were leaving the main highway for a smaller, darker road, the driver suddenly slowed down and pulled over to the shoulder. My body tensed immediately. Every alarm bell in my head started screaming. We were under a flickering street lamp, with nothing around but a chain-link fence and a dark, empty field. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. The driver, Bill, didn't answer. He just put the car in park, got out, and walked to the grassy edge of the road. He bent down and picked up something. He got back in the car, his face beaming with a strange, intense smile. He was holding a single, sad-looking roadside daisy, its petals slightly crushed. He turned around in his seat and offered it to me. "This is for you," he said, his voice soft and full of a weird reverence. "The first piece." I stared at him, then at the wilted flower. I didn't know what to do. I took it, my hand trembling slightly. Thanks," I stammered. He just nodded, his smile never wavering, and pulled the car back onto the road. I looked at the Uber app on my phone. The blue line of the suggested route was glowing on the screen. We were now a full 2 miles off course, heading in the completely wrong direction. "You missed a turn," I said, trying to keep the panic out of my voice. He just glanced at me in the rearview mirror, his eyes shining. "Don't you worry," he said cheerfully. "I know a better way, a much more scenic route." The scenic route was a terrifying journey through a series of dark, winding, and completely empty suburban back roads.
Each turn took us further away from the city lights, deeper into a silent, rain-soaked maze of sleeping houses and dark woods. And he kept stopping. The second stop was for a single child sneaker lying forlornly in a puddle. He got out, picked it up with an almost ceremonial reverence, and brought it back to the car. "For the journey ahead," he said, placing it carefully on the empty passenger seat next to him. The third stop was for a piece of a broken black vinyl record, sharp and jagged, lying on the asphalt. "For the song in your heart," he whispered, adding it to the passenger seat. The fourth stop, the one that made me truly, deeply afraid, was for a rusted, empty birdcage, half crushed in the gutter. "For the beautiful silence," he said, managing to fit it in the front seat, its bent bars looking like a rib cage in the dim light. With each stop, he would present the object to me with a little pronouncement, as if he were a scavenger priest, and these pieces of forgotten trash were holy relics. He was building a collection for me. I was in a state of quiet, frozen panic. I was texting my friend my location, but we were moving so erratically, zigzagging through unfamiliar neighborhoods, that the little dot representing my car was drawing an insane, meaningless scribble on her map. I tried the Share My Trip safety feature in the Uber app. It kept giving me an error message, unable to establish secure connection. I tried to be assertive. "Bill," I said, my voice shaking, "I don't want any more pieces. Please, just take me to my hotel. I'm very tired and I'm starting to feel sick." His friendly, folksy demeanor vanished. The smile dropped from his face, and his eyes in the rearview mirror were as cold and hard as river stones. "The collection is not yet complete," he said, his voice flat and devoid of any warmth. "We can't go to the destination until the final piece is in place. It has to be perfect for you." He pulled over again, this time next to a dark, dense patch of woods that bordered the road. "One moment," he said, his voice cheerful again, as if the last 30 seconds hadn't happened. "This one is special." He got out and walked into the trees, disappearing into the darkness. This was my chance. I lunged for the door handle. Locked. I tried the other door. Locked. The child safety locks were on. I was trapped. He was gone for what felt like an eternity. I was a caged animal, pulling on the handles, banging on the thick, soundproofed glass. But we were on a dead-end street with no houses. No one could hear me. I finally slumped back in my seat, a wave of pure, hopeless despair washing over me. He emerged from the woods, humming a cheerful, tuneless melody. In his hand, he was holding the final piece, a dirty, porcelain doll's head, its face cracked, one of its blue glass eyes missing. He got back in the car, the smell of damp earth and rain filling the space. He placed the doll's head on the dashboard, facing me, its one good eye seeming to stare right into my soul. "There," he said, with a deep, satisfied sigh. "Perfect. Now we can go home." With his collection complete, he drove with a new, confident purpose. He wasn't meandering anymore. He was driving straight and fast. But I knew, with a sickening certainty, that we were not heading towards my hotel. We left the suburbs behind, plunging back into a dark, rural landscape. 20 minutes later, we turned down a long, unpaved driveway, the car's headlights cutting through a tunnel of overgrown trees. At the end of the driveway was a dark, run-down, isolated farmhouse. "Where are we?" I whispered, my voice gone. "This isn't my hotel." "No," he said, his voice full of a gentle, paternal warmth that was more terrifying than any threat. "This is home. This is where we assemble the offering for you." He got out of the car and began walking around to my side. I knew, with absolute clarity, that if he opened that door, my life was over. It was now or never. I took off my shoe, and with all the strength I had, I smashed the heel against the side window. It took 3 tries, but it finally shattered. I scrambled out through the broken glass, cutting my arms and legs, and I ran. "Wait!" he called after me, his voice full of a genuine, heartbreaking disappointment. "Don't you want to see what we've made? I collected it all for you." I didn't look back. I just ran, crashing through the woods behind the house, the rain and my own tears blinding me. I finally got a signal on my phone. I hid in a ditch, whispering my location to a 911 operator. While I waited, hidden in the dark, I looked back at the house. There was a single bare light bulb on in the basement window. I crept closer, my morbid curiosity overriding my fear. I peered through the dirty glass, and I saw them. The basement was set up like a macabre art gallery. Against the stone walls were a dozen small, makeshift shrines. Each shrine was a collection of objects, arranged with a strange, obsessive care. One shrine had a rusty hubcap, a single dried oak leaf, and a woman's red high-heeled shoe. Another had a broken beer bottle, a child's toy car, and a man's silk necktie. And next to each shrine was a small laminated photograph, a driver's license photo of a person, their face frozen in a bland, bureaucratic smile. I was looking at the collections of his other passengers, his other victims. In the center of the room was an empty wooden table, and on it he was beginning to arrange my collection. The wilted daisy, the child's sneaker, the broken record, the bird cage, the doll's head. And next to them, waiting, was a small, empty, silver picture frame. The flashing blue and red lights of the police cars cut through the darkness, and I have never felt such a profound sense of relief. They found him in the basement, humming to himself as he carefully adjusted the position of the doll's head. He didn't fight, he didn't resist, he just seemed disappointed that his work had been interrupted. The police told me his story later. His name was William. He had been a scavenger, working for the city sanitation department for 30 years, a quiet man who kept to himself. His wife and daughter had been killed in a hit-and-run 10 years ago. He had a mental breakdown. He quit his job. He started driving. The objects he collected, the police theorized, were the last discarded remnants of other people's lives, other people's tragedies. He was trying to build a new family, a new set of memories from the broken pieces of the world he drove through. They found a box in his house containing over 20 different driver's licenses, people who had been reported missing over the years, all of them last seen taking a taxi or a ride-share home from the airport. He wasn't just collecting objects, he was collecting the people the objects belonged to. I was supposed to be the final piece of his newest, most perfect shrine. I'm safe now, I guess, but I'm not the same. I can't look at a piece of trash on the side of the road without feeling a jolt of fear. A lost glove, a single shoe, a broken toy. They're not just objects to me anymore. They're pieces of a story. They're part of a collection. The detective told me one last thing, something that haunts my dreams. They asked William why he didn't chase me when I ran. He just gave them his calm, gentle, insane smile and said, "Oh, I didn't need to. The collection is the important part. It has to be perfect. And it's no good if the recipient isn't there to appreciate it." He paused, then added, a hopeful glint in his eye, "But that's okay. There's always another flight landing, and I have all the time in the world to find the perfect pieces for the next collection."
I deliver for Uber Eats. You see a lot of weird stuff doing this job, but nothing prepares you for delivering to the same person in the same apartment 3 nights in a row and having a completely different person answer the door each time, all of them insisting they're John Doe. At the Cloverfield Apartments, the tenants are a little too interchangeable. I was working the late-night shift for Uber Eats to pay my way through college. It was usually a simple, mindless job. Get a ping, pick up the food, drop it off, repeat. The anonymity of it was comforting. I was just a ghost, facilitating the city's late-night cravings. The job was easy until I got my first delivery to the Cloverfield. The Cloverfield Apartments was a brand new luxury high-rise that had just opened up downtown. It was one of those cold, sterile buildings made of glass and steel that feels more like a corporate headquarters than a home. My first ping was around 11 p.m. for an apartment on the 7th floor. The customer's name was John D. I went up the silent, carpeted hallway to apartment 713. I knocked. A man in his late 20s with blonde hair and blue eyes opened the door. He was generic, like a stock photo of a young professional. He gave me a polite, bland smile, took the food, said thank you, and closed the door. Easy. The next night, my phone pinged. Another delivery. John D., apartment 713. A good tipper, I remembered. I picked up the food and went back up. I knocked on the same door. It opened. A man was there, but it wasn't the same man. This one had dark hair, brown eyes, and was a few inches shorter. I must have looked confused. "Sorry," I stammered, checking the name on the app. "I'm looking for John." The man gave me the exact same polite, bland smile as the man from the night before. He said, "That's me." His voice was the most jarring part.
It was a calm, almost monotonous baritone, the exact same voice as the blonde man. I was so taken aback, I just handed him the food. He said, "Thank you," in that same flat tone and closed the door. It had to be a coincidence. Roommates using the same account who just happened to have similar voices. It was weird, but I brushed it off. The third night, I was almost hoping I'd get the same order. And I did. John D., apartment 713. This time, I was ready. I was going to figure out the joke. I got to the door. I knocked. It opened. A completely different man stood there. This one was older, in his 40s, with graying hair at his temples. He looked at me, and his face broke into that same empty, carbon copy smile. Before he could speak, I just said, "John," and in that same familiar, monotonous voice, he replied, "That's me. Thank you." I just stood there, my mind short-circuiting, as he took the food and closed the door. They weren't roommates. They weren't brothers. Something deeply, fundamentally wrong was happening in apartment 713.
I became obsessed. I started lurking in the area around the Cloverfield, hoping to get another delivery ping. I needed to know what was going on. A week later, I got one. This time, it was for Jane Doe in apartment 804. My heart pounded as I rode the silent elevator up. A woman with short red hair answered the door. She gave me the smile, that same vacant, pleasant, not quite human smile. Her voice was a flat, calm alto. "Thank you." The next night, I got another order for Jane Doe in 804. I knocked. A completely different woman, this one tall with long blonde hair, answered. Same smile, same voice. "Thank you." It wasn't just one apartment. It was the whole building. It was a pattern. The residents, the tenants of this sterile glass tower were being swapped out, replaced by different bodies, all sharing the same handful of voices, the same empty smiles. They were like placeholders, generic avatars in a simulation. I started watching the building from my car across the street. I'd see the residents coming and going. They were a diverse-looking group, all different ages, races, and styles, but they all had the same strange, vacant look in their eyes. They moved with a similar, slightly too perfect, efficient grace. And the most unsettling part, they never, ever interacted with each other. They'd pass in the lobby, stand next to each other in the elevator without a single glance, a single nod. They were like a colony of insects, all part of a system, but utterly alone. I tried to do some research. I looked up the building's ownership. It was owned by a shell corporation, owned by another shell corporation, a corporate ghost. There were no public records, no reviews from tenants online. It was a digital black hole. I found only one single strange mention of the place, a post on a local construction workers forum from a year ago. The post was short and cryptic. "Anyone else work on the Cloverfield job? Something's not right with that place. The walls are wrong. They hum. Feels like they're listening." They were so hungry for new tenants. I knew I should have stayed away. I should have told Uber to block all deliveries to that address, but I couldn't. It was a horrifying, fascinating puzzle, and I had to see the final picture. One night, I got the ping again. John D., apartment 713. My hands were sweating as I rode the elevator up. The John of the day answered the door, a man I hadn't seen before. I handed him the food. As I was about to turn and leave, he spoke, his flat voice stopping me in my tracks. "You've been a very reliable driver, Michael." My blood went cold. He used my real name. My profile name is just Mike D. "Management has noticed your efficiency," he continued, his empty smile fixed on me. "They've asked me to extend an offer, a position." "A position?" I stammered. "What kind of position?" "A permanent residential position," he said, his smile widening a fraction of an inch. "We have an opening, apartment 714, right next door to me. You could be one of us. No more driving late at night. No more worries about rent. Just community, stability. We'll even help you move your things tonight, if you'd like." The offer was not friendly. It was a command. The air was thick with a silent threat. I had seen too much. I was a loose end, and I was being offered a choice: get woven into the pattern or be snipped. I have to think about it," I said, my voice shaking. I backed away slowly, then turned and walked down the hallway as fast as I could without running. I didn't breathe until I was back outside in the cool night air. As I got into my car, my phone buzzed. It was a notification from the Uber Eats app. It wasn't an order. It was a direct message from a user I'd never seen before. The Cloverfield Management. The message contained a single attachment. It was a photo. A clear, crisp image of my own driver's license photo, the one on my Uber profile, and below it, a single line of text. APT 714. Michael R. Welcome home. I drove. I didn't go home. I knew I couldn't. They knew who I was. They knew where I lived. They were trying to absorb me. I tried to call the police, but I hung up before it even rang. What could I possibly say? The people in an apartment building are all different, but they have the same voice, and they offered me an apartment? I sounded like a lunatic. I drove for hours, my mind racing. Was I a target, a witness they needed to silence? Or was I just the next delivery? My morbid curiosity, the same thing that kept me coming back, took over. I had to know. I had to see. I turned the car around and drove back to the Cloverfield. I walked into the silent, gleaming lobby. I got into the elevator and rode it up to the 7th floor. The hallway was empty. I walked to apartment 713 and listened at the door. Not a sound. Then I looked across the hall at apartment 714. The door was slightly ajar. A thin sliver of light was spilling out into the hallway. My heart was a jackhammer. I pushed the door open. The apartment was fully furnished, and it was a perfect, detail-for-detail replica of my own cheap, messy apartment across town. The same faded blue couch from IKEA. The same stupid framed poster of a world map on the wall. The same small crack in the ceiling above the coffee table. They had perfectly recreated my entire life in this sterile, high-rise box. In the middle of the room, a man was standing with his back to me, looking at the poster on the wall. He was wearing my gray hoodie, my faded jeans. He turned around, and his face was my face. It was me, a perfect, flawless copy of me, except the eyes were empty, devoid of any spark, and the smile on his face was the same placid, polite, soulless smile as all the others. "Hello, Michael," my own voice said, but it was flat, monotonous, stripped of all emotion. "It's good to finally be home." The copy took a step towards me. "I'm John now, but I'll need your car keys and your wallet." And in that final horrifying moment, I understood. The Cloverfield wasn't replacing people with random copies. It was absorbing them. It took a person, a life, an identity, and it created a new empty tenant to fill a vacancy. The different Johns I had seen were the building's failed attempts to assimilate other visitors, other delivery drivers, using their faces, but not quite getting it right. But me, I had been too consistent. I had been too reliable. I had given it a stable, perfect template. The building hadn't just copied my apartment. It was about to move in, and I was about to be evicted. I looked at my own empty face, and I heard the door click shut.